You're listening to the Bulldog Hour, getting you inside the Wilson football program with weekly game previews, recaps, highlights, and interviews. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Rapoff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bulldog Hour. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and sitting here next to me, as always, is my co-host, Justin Rapoff.
Yeah, it's good to be here. It's one of those weeks.
It is one of those weeks.
There's no getting around it.
It's unfortunate. It's disappointing, and I know there were people questioning, do you do a show? We don't like talking to coaches and players after a defeat. We don't do the interviews then, but we don't just completely abandon. Like, we don't jump ship and be like, no show this week.
Right.
There's still a show. We still want to recap the game.
Right. We're not the Auburn football Twitter account.
Or the Buffalo Bills Twitter account.
Ooh, shots fired.
Shots fired. Yeah, take that. Maybe don't celebrate a victory before the clocks say 0. But
that was a ridiculous game.
It was very ridiculous, and it had me saying all kinds of things to you via text.
Well, it's funny because
the ups and downs,
and I told you, like, I was just sitting there, like, kind of eating popcorn because, like, I don't know, I found myself kind of like, I don't want to say wanting the Vikings to win because I didn't really want them to. I wanted the Vikings to lose, but like at the same time, I kind of like see them come back all that way. Like it was entertaining, but I really didn't have like one position or another in that game. I was just kind of sitting there watching it. In reality, hoping the Vikings would lose because that was better for my team, like the team I root for. But like watching it, it was definitely entertaining. Yeah.
Yeah. It was entertaining for sure. College football was entertaining yesterday too. Penn State got a huge win against one of the teams that I really don't like in Maryland. They joined
James Franklin.
They joined a list that includes Rutgers, Temple, and Pitt.
Although you were never the coach in waiting at Maryland, like James Franklin was. So
I've also never condoned or encouraged people to not shake the opponent's hand.
Oh gosh,
one of the biggest, like, I can't believe that just happened moments ever.
Yeah,
but anyways,
all of that aside, I'm glad. Well, and the Eagles didn't play today; they play tomorrow, so they play tomorrow. Draw out my anxiety from the weekend. through Monday night.
Spread it out over a few days rather than getting it
right.
All
Like
out of
last weekend, they ripped that Band-Aid off early. So.
Right. Yeah, early enough. But right then we were reeling from a World Series defeat.
Right, exactly.
And now we're just reeling from the end of the Wilson football season in 2022, unfortunately. Right. And once again, we mentioned it multiple times over the last few weeks, at the hands of the Harrisburg Cougars, who have just become a real thorn in the side of the Wilson program. Since the Bulldogs beat Harrisburg back in 2015, Wilson hasn't been able to take down Harrisburg. Yeah. That's now 4 consecutive losses dating back to 2018. 2018 loss at Harrisburg, in the playoffs. 2019 loss at home to Harrisburg on an untimed down. Yeah. Which I brought that back up to you, which you were like, I had blocked that one.
I honestly, like, with not joking, I had blocked that one out of my memory. I had forgotten about that one. And then, like, we're driving up there, and it's just like this wave of it coming back. I'm like, oh gosh, like the gut punch feeling all over again.
Yeah. And everyone knows what happened in 2020, and then 2021 comes along last year, and it was a really up and down season last year, but very fulfilling in the end to make it to even get to play Harrisburg in the district championship game. But back at Severance Field, we all know how that one ended. 14-10. A lot of woulda, coulda, shouldas, and here we are a year later, and I feel like the same feelings exist.
Yeah, the game played out a lot differently than last year's game, but I feel like there's a decent amount of overlap in terms of that. A lot of what ifs.
I think the more
one of the different things last year to me was, yes, it's painful because that was the district championship, but you also had those. You had the win against York, and then you had the extreme high of beating Central York, in the fashion that game went and stuff like that. And this year, just because of the matchups, which again, a lot of that has to do with your own stuff, but a lot of that has to do with other stuff too. It ends up being in the first round, which is tough because, and we talked, this is not unique to Wilson and Harrisburg, but like we're a good 6 teams that we feel are capable of winning a district title in 6A, like that we would give really good chances to, and the other 2 we would have given like the puncher's chance. Carlisle, it didn't work out for them.
Yeah,
but York, you saw again, like if they can force you into a shootout, like you never know. Like
right, they took Central York to the edge 2 out of the last 3 weeks, and the only week in between was a bye.
And it's not like Central York was giving up crazy points to the other games they played this year. They weren't. So, like, there was only one team really scoring against them this year, and it was York, and they did it twice.
It'll be interesting to see how York William Penn responds next year without Stoner and White in the backfield. I don't know the history of the program. Right. Will they be able to bounce back? Do they have a lot in the system? I don't know. That's just one of the storylines I'm interested to see. I mean, maybe people were saying that about Central York this year, using Pagula and all the athletes they had, including I think a few defensive stars. And look where they are this year.
Right.
Now 10-1, and in the semifinals hosting Harrisburg this coming Friday. The other semifinal matchup will be, as much as this probably pains Wilson fans, an all LL1 rematch between Hempfield and Manheim Township at Hempfield Friday night. The Black Knights got the better of the Blue Streaks earlier this year in a close game. So we'll see if history repeats itself.
Yeah,
or
the last 2 times they played, Hempfield has won 17-14.
Yeah, Hempfield's won their last 2 in the series, and now none bigger than this, with the right to host a district championship on the line for Coach Eager and Hempfield.
Right.
Central York probably really mad about the way things ended at the hands of the Bulldogs last year. Now are looking to go toe-to-toe with Harrisburg, who they have not played well against either of late when they've met. And actually, I believe their former head coach or was it? Yeah, it was York, right? It was Central York, right? Coach Oswald, didn't he leave to go to Cumberland Valley?
Went to Cumberland Valley,
and he's like, our league. He called out the York Adams League and was like, our league is not good enough to go up against these teams. When it gets to the playoffs, we're essentially, he didn't say this word for word, but he said we're being embarrassed when we get to the playoffs.
He was right. Like up until
the last 3 years.
Like
2020 last year and now this season.
He was right.
Right. You would get a mixture of, depending if they're 5A or 6A, Dallastown, Red Lion, York, William Penn, and Central York. The 4 of them would rotate in, 1, 2, or even 3 would make it into the playoffs, and they would all get bounced early.
And usually mercy ruled.
Beat up pretty good.
Like, what was it? The one, and we had a good team, but like, Iggy had almost like 300 yards.
He had
and
6 touchdowns in the first half.
Right,
because the team was begging Coach Doms to leave him in to, I believe, set the playoff record that was held by LaShawn McCoy.
Right. And so, like, it's one of those. Now, that has changed. And really, it's changed not just with one school, but like Central York and York. Like, I know York doesn't have the wins to show it for it the last 2 years, but that's a different York team than
they've been
previous years.
In the playoffs. They've been putting up numbers. They've been proving that they deserve to be in the field.
Right.
Where there have been so many years, especially when it was back in 4A, when there were 16 teams making it, and you get 3, 4, 5 York teams in there, and they would all lose. I mean, there was an article, I think, after the 18 or 19 season, just listing like the York Adams.
Right. And it wasn't just the highest levels. It was like all the way through, except like once you got down to like 2A, like DeLone Catholic and York Catholic, some of those schools would win sometimes, but you're down at like 2A, but like the upper levels, 3 and 4, they had nothing to show for it.
And they've turned a corner. So congratulations to them. Those are 2 very interesting semifinals.
Oh yeah.
If I wasn't deflated that Wilson's not in it, I might be interested in going to watch one of those. But it's time to relax and recharge this next weekend leading up to Thanksgiving. But Yeah, I mean, so that's pretty much all we're going to talk about the remaining district teams. I
Yeah.
don't we have too much else to say. I mean, by and large, I feel like I don't know. At least for my personal interest, I'm interested in what Hempfield can do. And if I was looking to, hitch onto someone, I would probably be doing that for Hempfield because despite that us losing to them this year,
Right.
I like Coach Ager.
Yeah.
And they it's just a team that I feel like
It's
you
been
can get
building.
behind.
Right.
Like
It's been building. The way that Wilson Hempfield game, we've talked about it enough. Like but it was like a Section 1 classic game. Like it really was, and they just won it. Like it wasn't that we lost it; that they went and won it. And yeah, it's just interesting. And it's someone else. Someone different.
someone different, yeah.
You look at it. You've got recent District 3 winners in the other three teams.
Right.
Township has won it not all that long ago. Harrisburg's won it last year, and Central York has won it the year before that.
Harrisburg's won it 3 of the last 6 seasons.
Yeah.
So they're looking for their 4th and 7.
Yeah, which is interesting because someone was talking about how like they used to be on that bubble between 5 and 6.
Well, they had dropped down to 5 because that's we never ran into when Micah Parsons transferred from Central Dauphin to Harrisburg.
Right.
That was the end of Wilson facing Parsons because
And Mifflin got
they were-
that epic upset of them.
in the rain.
Right. But then they've been kind of firmly in 6A
Yeah,
the last
they
few
bumped
years.
up. Yeah.
And so, we've played them, but before that, what I was trying to say is like they were hit or miss with their success. Like they were okay, but then they'd be, but they were always the team behind Central Dauphin, sometimes behind CV, and then sometimes behind CD East, or there with CD East. They were more on level with CD East. Like every now and then they'd have a really good team, but some years they'd be really shaky. But Coach Everett has really kind of changed that.
Right, and he's been there a while now. He's been there over a decade. Actually, might be 12 years now. I can't remember. It's right around there. It's right around that area, a decade ish in there. But honestly, I feel like the year that they got Micah,
that was when
they kind of like turned, whether that coincident or not, those players were coming up in that program at the way that people move schools in the Harrisburg areas because of the way you talk about the map of the Harrisburg school districts all the time.
Well, I just know
it's wacky. It's wacky.
One of my dad's friends lives 2 blocks. It could be more than 2 blocks, but like essentially, like next to Steel High School, and his kids go to CD East.
Right. It's just the boundaries are there. Just,
right.
It really. I mean, isn't there one where like there are 2 sides?
Yes.
Like the school district is split in 2 sides.
Yeah.
It's weird, but Harrisburg has just become a machine. And we talked just briefly about the future and what's going to happen with York. We know what's going to happen with Harrisburg because they have a lot of good players coming back next year. Now, Mekhi Hopkins will be moving on. He who rushed for over 150 yards against us yesterday.
That felt like a little bit of deja vu, didn't it?
It did, yeah. So he's moving on. Kyle Williams is moving on to Temple. Terrell Reynolds. I kept wanting to say Terrell Edmonds. Isn't there a professional football player by that? And I kept wanting to call him Edmonds, and I'm sorry. It's Terrell Reynolds, who only had 5 sacks yesterday, or I think it was 4 or 5, something ridiculous like that. The 3 of them will be gone, but honestly, the guy that I felt hurt Wilson the most was Sean Lee Jr.,
Right.
and he's back for not just next year, but the year after that too, because he was only a sophomore. So, we covered it with Jeff and Mike last week. They're just their star players or their big players, the big names, and there were plenty of juniors, a sophomore, and even the freshmen.
Right.
Now the freshman receiver didn't hurt us too badly.
They didn't pass a lot.
They didn't throw a lot. They were able to convert very often on the ground with either Hopkins just making people miss and breaking arm tackles, or Sean Lee improvising. And that was the biggest thing. They had 3 killer 4th down conversions where you could have ended their drive. I don't know if they scored on all of those. And one, it might have actually happened in the same drive.
I feel like 2 happened in the same drive, but it was a touchdown drive.
But it's just, that's the frustrating part, not being able to tackle and then not getting off the field when you had that opportunity. When you made 3 good stops to get them to 4, and one of them, actually 2 of the 3, I think were 4th and 6 or longer.
Yeah.
And there was the fake punt conversion.
Right.
That was in their territory. So, yeah, it's just a lot of what ifs and missed opportunities. It's tough to win a game when you lose the turnover battle too. That's one of the biggest things that decides games is giving the ball away.
Right.
Now,
and you can look at one of them, kind of like as a wash. When you're looking at the game, the first turnover with their only turnover, we ended up then getting the touchdown. And honestly, in terms of killing time, may have helped us a little bit.
It might have,
but you never know. But even if you look at the benefit, then you still have 2 more. Basically, what it came down to is I don't think you're going to find anyone who said that was really anywhere close to the best we can or should have played yesterday. And when you have that in the playoffs,
it's tough to win games.
It's going to be problems. And when you have that in the playoffs at Harrisburg, you're probably not going to win.
Right.
And that's what it comes down to. Like I said to someone, I've been saying to a bunch of people, ask me today kind of how it goes. You know what? Like, the thing is, and we talk about this all the time, in probably 7 of our games this year, that doesn't matter. I say, like, playing that way in the Manheim Township game, playing that way in the Hempfield game, playing that way against Harrisburg, those probably would have mattered. And you could throw in Roman Catholic, although you could also throw it in as it wouldn't have mattered. But in the other way.
Right.
But, like, honestly, the other 7 games, it probably doesn't matter. You know what I mean? The little things. But when it's Harrisburg, and you know what? And some of those we got too. We had a fair share of long conversions on 3rd and long and stuff like that. So we had a fair share of those too, and that's where you saw some of the back and forth. It's just in the end, too many little things. It's a tough pill to swallow because it's the end.
Right. You're right. And too many seniors now have walked off the field. Many not to play football again, at least in this fashion, in this manner. Definitely not for Wilson. Like a bunch of them are going to play in college, and that's great. But everyone always says, especially after college, it's so different, and there's nothing like high school football.
Right.
You just have such a connection to the players who you've played with them for close to a decade.
Right.
On the same field, the same teams. You're playing in front of your close friends and family in the community that has cheered for you for nearly that long too.
Right.
So it's nothing like that. So it's always a really, really disappointing, deflating feeling, and you always see it on the field afterwards, and there's not much you can really say.
Right.
Because I've been there.
Right.
It's not great.
Yeah. Heartbreakers, but on a separate but related note, I talk about but that's why it's awesome, because you care, because of those things you put in, all those highs that you have, it's tough to think of those on Saturday afternoon. It's tough to think of those the next day on Sunday. It's tough to think of those for quite a few days, and next weekend when you're seeing the scores from the other games come in. It's tough. In the long run, that sting from that one still, we talk about this all the time. With people like you and me, that last one, that sting stays there for a while. That's just the way it is. But at the end, being able to look back, we also remember lots of those good times too. And it's easier to do that when you're removed from it.
Yeah, it'll take time.
Right.
Time cures all.
But being invested in it and having all those things is what makes it so awesome,
Oh yeah, it makes it worth it.
And to be honest, Saturday didn't go how we wanted. It's been a lot of fun covering this team this year. This team has been a lot of fun to cover. Just some of the personalities in kids, and maybe that's just me having this more now too, where like I've known some of the kids longer.
Right.
Like you've had that longer than I have. It's been a few years now where I've had, but like some of these kids, like I know through coaching and class, which I didn't used to always have that. It was like I knew some of them, or some of them, you know, when we first started, I only knew them from the Friday nights. I didn't really know them at all outside of that. So I don't know. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah,
as we've done it. So.
It's always a great time. Every year, like I love getting to Memorial Day because I just know that now, like Wilson football is at the front of my mind, and when prepping for the season, we got 7-on-7 in June, and we have our summer Bulldog Hour where we're really like in the thick of it, and then July comes around and I start thinking, I was like, oh, I got to start interviewing the senior players and talk to the coaches, and so. It's always rough when the season ends, and you hate to see those kids that you like that we coach. We got to coach them for a year, then they went off to the freshman team. Then we saw them for 3 years at the high school.
Well, and I was talking to, this is before, but like I was talking, because as the season's ending, like you start, that realization that like it could end at any game now. After that township game, you realize it could end at any moment. And just in talking with my coaches, like it's also tough because like, as the coaches and even just as like being there covering, like we have an emotional investment in it. Like we get into it, but we know like I get to come back next year. Like if our schedules work out, if our personal lives are there, if it's still one of those priority things, like we can do that. But like for the kids, that's not how it works. They work their way through and then they're done, and and for a lot of them, it's the first time they've experienced stuff like that. Like if they've stopped playing other sports, it's kind of been because of their choice. Whereas like for some of them, it starts to become the realization that like, but it's also in senior year, and this happens for all the fall sports. Like that's how it goes, and it starts to be the last time through a lot of those things. Which, I know, and I tell the kids at school all the time, like, I know, like, you get to a point in senior year where you're just ready to be done, but, like, don't wish the days away.
No.
Easy for me to say, old man, but, like, just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, by and large, the fall sports are over with. I believe only field hockey is still playing at Wilson.
Huge
they
game on
have
Tuesday,
a huge game
I believe.
Tuesday at
Hamburg
against Emmaus, who is only the number 1 ranked field hockey team in the nation.
Right.
Not the state, in the nation. So Coach Underwood and her ladies have a huge task in front of him. But hey. You win that game, and guess what? You're playing for a state title on Saturday.
Hey, and look, like, you just have to beat them once.
Right. You don't have to.
Right.
It's not
you just got to beat them once.
Not best of 3, best of 5, best of 7. One and done.
Be better on Tuesday.
Right.
Well, we got
win
this.
that day and move on. So good luck to the field hockey team on Tuesday. Don't want to forget that at the end of the show. And hey, Friday, winter sports start.
Yeah.
Basketball, wrestling, indoor track, swimming.
Yeah.
What am I missing? Did I get everything? Is bowling?
We have rifle.
Bowling. Is bowling in the winter?
Bowling is in the winter. Yep.
Yeah, rifle. So I'm sorry. There might be a winter cheer.
Competition cheer.
Competition cheer. So good luck to all the student athletes participating in those sports, especially you seniors. This is the last ride for that for many of you too.
Yep.
So go out and have fun. One last thing before we get deep into the Harrisburg recap and the season wrap up. Justin mentioned how much fun this team was, and I think it helps a lot, Justin, because we by and large knew all of the seniors.
Yeah, it just hit me after we talked about it a little bit.
We've always known since 2016 when you started coaching at West with Anton and me. We've known the class that would go through the high school, about half of it.
Right, about half the kids.
Coached half of them at West. We didn't know the Southern kids, but we get to know the Southern kids. It's fun. But back in the fall of 2018, West and Southern were combined, and we were one team, one middle school team, and that is this group that's come up through Wilson High School now. So by and large, unless they moved into the district after middle school, we knew all of them.
Right.
So this class, like, we had personally coached and interacted with and knew as they went up through the system. So that's a unique perspective for us to know most of the seniors for, the last 4 years. So, that's what sticks out to remember this group in the long run, just because it wasn't, I only got to know him the last 2 years while he was at the high school. No, we knew these kids for the last 4 years.
Right.
Well, really, I guess really 5 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's fun. It's a good group. It was fun to watch, and they'll be missed. I am looking forward to watching probably all of them or most of them in whatever sport they play, not just in the winter, but in the spring too.
Yep.
So there's a lot of athletic competition left to watch these football seniors participate. Just not on the gridiron anymore, but they got a lot to look forward to, because I know a lot of them play basketball, lacrosse, baseball, track and field. Right. I think there's some wrestlers in there. Yep. So a whole bunch of stuff to come. But let's take a quick look at the Harrisburg game and just throw out some stats from the game for those of you that may be wondering. Offensively speaking, the game really went through junior quarterback Tommy Hunsaker. That's what they ended up having to really rely on Tommy. They couldn't get the ground game going directly with the running backs, with the Cam or Cleveland. Cam ended up with 34 yards. Cleveland just a single yard, only on 2 carries. But they couldn't get those two guys going at all. It just wasn't there for them. So ended up, zone read or RPO action with Tommy, and that's where he made a kill. He had a bunch of good runs, 15, 20, 25 plus yard runs, be it by design or on scrambles. He was elusive, which he needed to be. He ended up rushing for 74 yards. Cam did get the 1 touchdown, but I mentioned the 34 yards. That was a big bummer as we were walking out of the stadium Saturday afternoon when you asked me how many yards did Cam need to get to 1,000 for the season, and I said 35. Yeah. And you said, oh, I don't know if he got that.
Right, because I thought the number was a different number.
You thought it was like 16 or something like that. I thought it was 16,
yeah.
And we had been giving the stat sheet, and you looked and you said he got 34, and I couldn't believe it. Cam Jones finishes the year with 999 yards, 1 yard shy of 1,000-yard rushing season. Yes, I don't know what to say about that. That's just unfortunate. That's unfortunate. It really is. Just to be so close to that cutoff, that mile marker. Right. So that's where we're at with rushing wise. Passing, Tommy was 13 of 22 for 223 yards, 2 touchdowns. I did say he got sacked 5 times though,
which also hurt those rushing yards.
Well, yeah, he lost 48 yards on the sacks, which took away from his rushing total, because he gained 122 yards, but he got sacked so many times that took away from him his rushing total. The 2 touchdowns both went to Eddie Case. Yeah. And I didn't realize at the time, but those were the only 2 catches that Eddie had. They both were for touchdowns, and they were both really well thrown balls, really nice passes from Tommy, and really great catches by Eddie. Yeah. The first one was a sprawling catch in the end zone to give Wilson the lead right before halftime. Yeah. And then the second was to give Wilson life near the end of the game. Yep. That he made a nice catch at it was like the 7, and then was able to get into the end zone and made sure that the Bulldogs hadn't given up. Things were still going their way. But those were both catches for Eddie. So he had 68 yards receiving the 2 touchdowns. Austin Velukovic had 4 for 62.
Yeah, real nice game.
Cam Jones,
including I think Austin was the receiver on one of the. It was like 4th and long.
It was. Yep.
I don't know how many yards. So, but like in my head, if it was 17,
it was like I wanted to say it was 18.
But
it was,
he went 1 yard past. Like you don't see the pros do all the time, how they like go to the marker and work back a yard. He went like 2 yards past the marker, worked back a yard, and got the first down. Like it was really good catch.
Right, and that's either incredible football IQ, good coaching, or both.
Yeah.
Like something came into play there that he knew what needed to be done.
Right.
Whether he knew it or whether the coaches reminded him, you can't run a route to the sticks and then come back for the ball. If you're coming back for the ball, you better be past the sticks. Right. He did it perfectly. Yeah. It was a really well job. That was the one that was thrown across the field, too. Yeah. Tommy rifled it across the field.
It was a great throw, great time. Like, to do that when they're clearly able to get a rush often, that was a big play.
It was a really big play. Too little, too late, unfortunately. Wilson did end up kicking an onside kick that honestly looked to be a very good attempt at an onside kick, but an unfortunate bounce. It bounced right into one of the guys running down the field before 10 yards. Otherwise, another yard or two, I think they might have gotten it.
Right.
And now you're talking about a completely different scenario because now the game at the time was 26-21, I believe.
I think so.
You get that onside kick,
you got the ball at midfield.
And you had just driven down the field.
Right down the field.
They were on their heels.
Yeah.
And game inches,
it turned
bad bounce.
Right, because I think 3 plays later, they scored.
Yeah, oh, yeah, they gave it to Hopkins on a few plays back-to-back, grinding it out, and he ended up rumbling 23 yards for a touchdown that essentially iced the game there. It was going to be tough to come back by 11 points that late in the game, but so that's the offensive side of the ball. I think I covered most everything. Single catches for Rafael Fernandez, Mekhi Cooper, and Cleveland Harding from Tommy as well. We mentioned a little bit about Harrisburg, but just to reinforce it, Mekhi Hopkins rushed 23 times for 163 yards. He did not lose any yardage on any of his carries, which is crazy to me because he was constantly being met at the line of scrimmage, either by his own players, like running into their backs, or by Bulldog defenders. But every single time he managed to, at a minimum, get no yardage or a yard plus because he didn't lose any. He had 163 yards just rushing, 2 touchdowns. He's averaged 7 yards a carry. Sean Lee, the quarterback, 15 carries for 100 yards. He did lose 16 on sacks, though, so he ended up netting 84, but he had a rushing touchdown. And then Kyle Williams, the playmaking athlete for the Cougars, Kyle Williams had 11 carries for 70 yards and a score as well. So their 3 big offensive playmakers accounted for 4 touchdowns. And then Sean Lee threw for 1 as well. So he was, they didn't throw the ball a lot. They didn't really need to, but when they did, he was 7 of 9 for 37 yards.
Well, they didn't throw the ball downfield.
No, it was quick outs. It was screens. Right? They didn't. They did
one downfield reception, I thought, but
and the one that they thought they had got with, I believe it was the freshman receiver Elias Koch, I think his name is. Over on our sideline, they were really mad because the one ref had ruled it as catch, and then he was overridden by another ref, and that was the right call. That was not a catch. I don't know if there is a video angle that you can tell.
Yeah, I told you because I told you from where I was.
Right, you were on the Harrisburg sideline.
Right, you couldn't see it. To be honest, I thought he caught it, but again, I couldn't see that side.
Right.
I'm also watching through the screen, which makes it even harder to see.
Well, I was standing right there, and I texted you right away. I was like, "Well, that was almost the second worst call I've ever seen," because from our vantage point, you could clearly see that he had sort of pinched the ball with his hands, but it rolled along the turf as he was making the catch. He did not ever have possession of that ball along the ground. And thankfully, the referee that was up above, closer to the line of scrimmage, came running down and signaled to the other referee that he did not catch the ball. Because the ref right there called it a reception.
Right.
And I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
I knew it was going to be interesting because I immediately saw the guy, and I don't know, maybe the line judge or I don't know, running down, waving it off. Like, that was not a delayed thing. It took him some time to get down there, but like he was waving it off immediately.
Well, that was the right call. And now I know the exact opposite happened in terms of the vantage point thing on Eddie's first touchdown.
Right.
The diving one in the end zone. Good coverage by Harrisburg.
Yeah.
But Tommy put the ball where it needed to be. Eddie went up and got the ball. From the
Eddie,
pictures,
like the prototype receiver, too. Like, they're able to go up and get it.
The pictures I have show him making the catch, but his back is to me.
Right.
And I think the Harrisburg side was complaining that when he went to the ground, the ball maybe moved.
Right. Again, I was watching through the screen. I couldn't see it.
I couldn't see it. So,
But the ref was right
there,
there.
and I said
again.
that to you.
Yeah.
I said, well, I couldn't see it. His back was to me, but the ref was right there.
Right.
Of course, they might say that about the guy that I said was right there.
Right,
But
right.
again, I said this to you after the game. You can't do this through text, but I understand why the ref on our side ruled the Coke reception, non-reception, a reception at the time, because his vantage point, looking at the player's face mask and hands, it looked as though he had caught the ball.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't see that the ball was along the turf.
Right.
Whereas from, just 10 yards up the field where I was looking, and the rest of the Wilson sideline, and then the other referee, you could tell that he never had control.
Right.
So that's why then I said to, I think it might have been Ryan Wolber and Justin Burke that were standing there with me. I said, and that's why you have multiple referees along the entire side. We play middle school games with sometimes 3 refs, should be 4. High school, at a minimum, you need 5, and I know Burks uses 6, and I think in the playoffs, a lot of them are 6-man crews.
Right.
So I was very thankful that they were in the
they
proper
also use
positioning.
they use like officials for the chains
Chain-
and everything
chain
there,
crews.
which gives them. I know they don't usually aren't going to be talking to the people on the chain, but it just gives them more people to kind of like talk through things. I know early in the game, and it was frustrating because it took a few minutes for them, but like. They talk through it. They make their, they get all those things ironed out, hopefully, and then they go with the call.
The crew, I believe, was a York crew on the call, the referees.
Yeah.
It was I felt like it was a rough first half for them.
Yeah.
I don't remember them being much of a factor in the second half.
No, and I feel like, there were a lot of the penalties, and there were a decent number of penalties. A lot of the penalties were pre-snap penalties, which
should be easy.
Right. Like, when you jump off sides, like it's pretty clear. Like
there was, I don't want to get into officiating, and I'm not blaming the officials for anything. I don't want to put this on the air because I don't want to get anyone in trouble. But I talked to one of the Wilson coaches who had asked one of the referees a question, and the response left him like in shock at what was said. So I will tell you that off the air. I don't want that on the record. But when he relayed it to me, then I was like, "Are you serious? That was the response you got?" But
well, maybe it was like when we got home, and this is just me speculating and throwing in a Penn State reference here. When we were watching, and the color commentator on the Penn State game yesterday goes, "Well, I agree with that no call because it was a bad route. Like it shouldn't get pass interference."
Honestly, that's essentially what it's going to be about. It's essentially like. Well, when you do or don't make a call, when it came down,
my dad was in the car and was listening to the Maryland feed for that, and the Maryland announcer was like, "That was pass interference."
Well, I was like, "That was pass interference. How do you not call that?" It doesn't matter that you don't like the way he ran the route against man coverage.
Maryland announcers,
pass interference is pass interference.
Maryland announcers were basically like, "Oh, we'll take it."
Got away with
he
that
got
one.
there early. Yeah,
he definitely did. It wasn't that close either, but whatever. We're not here to talk about Penn State. So. Defensively speaking, for the Harrisburg-Wilson game yesterday, Wilson's leading tackler was senior linebacker Landon Farrell. He had 10.5 total, 9 solo, 1 for loss. Obviously not against Mackay. Must have been against Sean or Kyle. He did force the fumble, Kyle Williams fumble at midfield after the Wilson turnover.
That was a good hustle play.
Great play. Yeah, Landon was flying around, and he led the team in tackles, and he had one of the Wilson sacks as well. Up next, a familiar name here when we go over defensive stats, senior linebacker Nick Krokona had 9 total tackles, 8 solo, and 2 assisted. Senior defensive end Nick Weitzel, 7 tackles, 1 for loss, and 1 sack. Ryan McMillian, junior linebacker, had 5. Senior safety Nate Capitano had 4.5. Junior safety Eddie Case had 3, and the fumble recovery on the Farrell forced fumble, Eddie came up with that one. So big plays from Eddie Case, and to give out our final award, I think there's no better place to go than with the junior wide receiver and defensive back for his play yesterday at Harrisburg. The 2 big catches for touchdowns on the throws from Tommy Hunsaker, and then the fumble recovery and his contributions on the defensive side. He did leave the game early with an injury, and we wish him the best and hope that he has a speedy recovery. I haven't heard any updates about that But I hope Eddie's okay and ready to go, and it will be a boon for the Wilson football team next year to have him back in the fold.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one. You try and things didn't go their way, and I know we've got plenty of episodes to talk about that. But Eddie and Austin played really well yesterday, I thought, and that's good. You like to see that. Having some of those weapons for Tommy coming back. Yeah. So, but anyway, I know we've got plenty of time to talk about that. But
Eddie we're
really,
gonna do that. We're gonna go over
Eddie
that.
Eddie really did make a few really big plays in the game, and hopefully he's all right and has some time to get better here.
And I think we pretty much covered the stat portion that we wanted to mention. Again, the defense was led by Terrell Reynolds for Harrisburg. He had 4 sacks himself. Another one came from linebacker Timon Maxwell. Amir Jones had 5 tackles. Granberry had 4. He also forced the fumble. Amir Jones had 2 pass breakups, and I believe the 2 interceptions. What? Yeah, there they are. Were Zakai Lewis. So if you remember that those names sound familiar, it's because it's all the names we mentioned last week.
Right.
Like these are the players to know.
Well,
Reynolds, Jones, Granberry, Lewis. I didn't even mention Ryan Epps here, but he had 2 tackles for loss. And Timon Maxwell. Literally everyone that we mentioned last week, all were big time players for Harrisburg.
Yeah. Yeah.
We shouldn't be surprised. They've been doing it all year.
Right. And not to be, there's only 30 some guys on the roster.
Right,
so
I think 33 is what you told me you counted.
And that was a rough count trying to count as they ran out. It was low 30s. But man, they're guys. They can play.
Yeah. So obviously they're gonna go through attrition from graduation losses, but when you have Sean Lee Jr. back at quarterback, they're always gonna be a problem. So I'm sure after the loss in 2018 and 2019, we were thinking, man, maybe this is.
Last year, there were times where he seemed like maybe a little flustered. He still played really well, but he seemed maybe a little flustered, or fresh. He seemed really poised yesterday. Mm-hmm. Nothing fazed him. He was ready to go.
I'm very curious to see how that Harrisburg Central York game goes. I'm interested to see who comes out on top of that.
Yeah.
If you had to make me pick, honestly, I think if you were pick the winner of those 2 games, I might say Harrisburg Manheim Township.
Yeah, I just look. Yeah, I'd probably pick Harrisburg. I'm
not picking who I necessarily want to win.
No.
Game.
But I think I with Harrisburg, I'm kind of in that mindset. We talk this all the time when we talk about our pro teams or our college teams and stuff. I'm gonna stick with them until you show me something different.
Right.
And then on the other side, it's really hard to beat a team twice in a season. It's really hard to beat them 3 times in a row, and that's a little bit of a rivalry there. Township. That's gonna be a crazy. I think that could be a really good game.
Yeah. Well, I just think of it. I know we started by saying any of the 8 teams could have won. For certain, I felt the top 7 seeds, anyone could come out.
Really interesting if it was Township Harrisburg, because that would lead to another rematch.
Right. And even at this point, when you're resetting the field, there's 4 teams left. If you said you can have Harrisburg or the field, I'm taking Harrisburg.
Yeah.
We saw him field, we saw Township.
I think
didn't see Central
from
York,
a talent standpoint, there's just so many weapons.
Right.
And both sides.
I know,
and it's the same guys, but both sides of the ball.
And we mentioned it on the show last week, but for anyone that didn't listen or forgets, yes, Manheim Township beat Harrisburg at Harrisburg in week 3, but Coach Everett wasn't there. Right. And you can tell by the way that Harrisburg operates that he obviously this shouldn't be breaking news, but the head coach matters.
Right. Right. This isn't and not that it wouldn't, but this isn't major college football or even the NFL, but even there, it does, but it's not like you have completely separate whole staffs which are coming up with game plans independent of the head coach. I mean, I know a little bit that happens with some of the big time high school programs, but you know what I mean? You still have the head coach who's calling a lot of the shots, but he's what makes that machine work.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can imagine, and it was early in the year, and And Township scored with 4 seconds left.
Right. Yeah,
Like-
they nearly won. They were nearly won without Coach Everett there, and now he's there and has them clicking. And they're a dangerous program. They have just really come into their own. We saw flashes of it 10 years ago now, where Wilson played them twice. Lost a little bit. Like people, I think, were shocked that Wilson lost in week 2 in 2012 to Harrisburg, and then thankfully for us, you just mentioned it's tough to beat a team twice in a year. Yeah. We rebounded and took it to them in the district championship game that year.
I know it's of no consolation to Wilson, but like every team we lost to this year is still playing.
True.
Yeah. But the same is true for Harrisburg, and they only lost to 2 teams.
Yes, also true.
Right.
So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Overall, statistically, total offense was fairly even. Yeah. Wilson ran 50 plays, gained 332 yards. Harrisburg ran 59 plays, gained 349 yards. Wilson did most of their damage. It was a little more balanced than Harrisburg, but believe it or not, through the air, like that kind of in contrast to the way the rest of the season went. But Harrisburg gained 312 yards on the ground. And it was Wilson's inability to stop him, especially Mekhi Hopkins throughout the game, and Sean Lee on these key moments, those key downs, 3rd or 4th down conversions.
I know
that's
it's hard to say that last year because they only scored 14 points, but it felt, in terms of how it felt, like Mekhi Hopkins and then Sean Lee when they needed it, and that's what it felt like on Saturday. Mekhi Hopkins and Sean Lee when they needed it. It felt very similar, even though the games were kind of opposites. They were very different games. It felt really similar.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. It kind of fits right into the other 3 games that we've been talking about. 2018, Harrisburg jumped out to a 30-0 lead win 6 minutes because of turnovers.
Right.
And that game, and then we talked about on the way up, and then Wilson played them really evenly the rest of the game.
Right.
Because I think the final score was 36-12 or something like that. But they got 30 points in the first 6 or 8 minutes of the game. Multiple turnovers. That was a bitterly cold and windy game. So that one got out of hand quickly. Then 2019, back and forth, literally the last play of the game decided it. Last year, just a low-scoring slugfest, and then this year, almost more of a shootout. So it's kind of, we've seen it all now in the last 5 years. These games,
enough.
They've all been Cougar wins, so I'm done with that. Okay. We need to move on and get over that hump. But so that's the 2022 Wilson football season. That's the end of the playoffs for Wilson. But I think the last thing we want to do, we talked about player of the game at Harrisburg being junior wide receiver, defensive back Eddie Case. But we also have been giving out our player of the year, and I don't think it should be a surprise to anyone that the 2022 MVP presented by us here at the Bulldog Hour is senior athlete. I didn't know what else to call him because do it all.
Everywhere.
Yeah, everything. Cam Jones this past season. Last year, you heard Mike Drago say last week he was in all league selection at 4 different positions, which could you even get more than that? I mean, maybe if you kicked, I guess you'd have to probably be the kicker too to get 5.
I could.
Probably could. Don't need him to. So
it would be hard. I know he snaps for the punts, not
he used to. He did.
He did yesterday.
Did he?
Yeah, he long snapped for the punt yesterday.
I missed that.
But it would be hard to snap and kick. But if anyone could do it, Cam might be able to do it.
Yeah. So I mean, a phenomenal season from Cam. 999 yards rushing for him on the season. Many touchdowns. I think I just closed out. No, I do have it. The season to date stats up. Let me pull that up. All right, where are you at? Somewhere. Oh, there you are. Too many tabs open. All right, so Cam for the year he gained 1,019 yards. Unfortunately, he lost 20 to leave him at a net 999. 20 rushing touchdowns for him. He also returned 6 punts for 358 yards and 5 touchdowns, so we're up to 25 touchdowns total. He also threw a touchdown.
Yeah, I forgot.
26 touchdowns and also had a receiving touchdown. So 27 touchdowns on the season for Cam Jones, 26 in the stat sheet as a rusher, receiver, returner, and then 1 as a quarterback, which just came 2 weeks ago at Manheim Township that went to Nick Weitzel. So phenomenal season from Cam, and huge shoes left behind to fill for next year. But congratulations to Cam on a great season, and look forward to seeing him on the basketball court now, starting this Friday. And I'm hoping to get to a few games in December, January, February to watch Cam and his teammates play some hoops. So, but speaking of next year and trying to fill Cam Jones's shoes, you mentioned it a bit about, you started talking about who was coming back, and you started mentioning a few names, specifically Eddie Case, our player of the game from Harrisburg, and Austin Vlukovic, both back. That's not all, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
There's a lot.
So we're thankful for everything that happened in 2022, but we always do give a quick preview of 2023 just to give an idea of people what's coming back, what returning talent is there. And there is a lot for Wilson. You lose Cam Jones, huge.
Yeah.
27 touchdowns
I
contributed.
know, like in college and stuff, you always see those stats of like percentage of offense like lost, like that would be a big percentage.
Yeah, that would be a big one for sure. But positively speaking, your quarterback is back.
Yeah.
Tommy Hunsker now has a season under his belt. He has operated the team all 11 games, so he returns. You have the aforementioned Eddie Case and Austin Vlukovic.
And I feel like it's been a little bit since we've had a returning quarterback.
Yeah, I guess it would. Well, Caleb in 2020.
Oh yeah.
2019,
So not that long ago.
So not super long ago.
However, in some ways, 2020 does feel like a long time ago.
Right? Yeah, so both was recent and a long time ago. Brady Klein at tight end, back for year 3. And then you also have 4 of your 5 offensive linemen returning, which that cannot be overlooked. That's a huge deal. That's one of those things that can make or break a team. And when you have 4 returning offensive linemen and a veteran quarterback, plus 3 of your offensive weapons at the receiver, that's a good start. That's a good start. So right now, I guess you could say 8 out of 11 guys are back. Now, running back will be, toss up because we mentioned Cam's gone. Cleveland graduates as well. So that you'd expect the job to fall to Amir Wellmacher, Nick Fiorini, and Corell Akings.
Right.
Would be the 3 off the top of my head.
Right. That's all carries, at least in some times this year. Yeah.
Christian Duarte Diaz also could be in the mix there. So there's 4 guys that had some experience, not a lot of late. Early in the year, they saw a little bit more time, and there are also injuries that prevented a few of them from playing in a few games. But those are the 4 names right now that would have to fill the void at running back. And offensive line, you're in a good position too, because you have Jack Dendel back.
Yep.
You have Logan Kurzweig back, possibly at center, but they could move him to guard. Right. You have AJ Matta back at tackle, and you have Ryan McMillan, who was converted to offensive line this year, back at guard. If you want him there, I don't know where else he would play on offense. If they would need him to fill in like an H-back or a hybrid tight end role, where he was before, because very few teams line up in the eye and use a fullback. That's probably where Ryan would fill in really well, but that's not the type of offensive system they use anymore. So he was moved to offensive line and performed very well there. He's back. So you only have trying to replace Brendan Hopp, multi-year starter. So pretty big loss there, but you had guys that filled in because of injuries or for whatever reason at line this year. And 2 of the ones that stand out are Reiniger and Geloso. Both of those guys played meaningful varsity snaps along the offensive line this year.
And both of those are sophomores.
And both of them are sophomores. Right. So I would expect one of them to fill in at whatever offensive line spot is up for grabs. So a lot of experience coming back on the offensive side of the ball. They're going to have to figure out who the guy is at running back and who is the go-to playmaker on the offense. Right now, you've got to think it's going to fall on Tommy to be the guy with the type of offense they're running in the read and the RPO type stuff that they're doing. And Tommy has shown that he's able to handle that with his athleticism. So having him back for another year is just phenomenal. So if they can get a couple playmakers to step up and have a good year from the returning receivers, there's a lot of promise there. Defense is another story. There's a big voids being left by this departing senior class.
Yeah.
You're losing both cornerbacks in Cam Jones and Rafael Fernandez. You're losing one of the safeties in Nate Capitano. Eddie Case will be back at the other safety spot. I know they're very high on Adam Woods at safety, so he could possibly be stepping in there for the departing Capitano, depending on how things shake out there. I don't even want to get into who could step up and play the cornerback spots.
Right.
But defensive line, lots of hits along the defensive line. I already mentioned Brendan Hopp on the offensive line. You're losing him on the defensive line too. Nick Weitzel, who is the most experienced edge rusher at defensive end, 2-year starter, contributor as a sophomore. He's gone now. You're losing Taj at defensive tackle, and
Cassius.
You're losing Isaiah Cassius along the defensive line as well. So you got to find guys to step up. Now, we talked about having all those guys on the offensive line. Obviously, those guys can play defensive line too, and we know that Kurzweg has been in there along the defensive line. Mata played snaps on the defensive line. So did Reiniger. Dendel was kind of used sparingly depending on the situational thing, but those guys might be asked to do more. You don't like to see your linemen, that many of them, going both ways.
Right.
You want to keep them fresh. So hopefully there's some guys, some underclassmen that can step up and fill the line, the void along the defensive line from the departing seniors. But a linebacker, you're losing Landon Farrell, who's leading tackler from the Harrisburg game. You're losing your season leading tackler in Nick Ricona at linebacker. He's gone as well. Ryan McMillan is back. Nick Fiorini is back. He saw time at linebacker.
Jackson Wagner.
He
was back.
Right. He missed the first few games to start the year, but he played a lot. So he'll be back. So McMillan, Wagner, Fiorini, and then I expect Christian Duarte Diaz to also have a role in the linebacker core as well, because he played in the Roman Catholic game, and he was a key tackler contributor on special teams, and he will only be a junior. So and those are the names to watch out for. So there's more gaps, it seems, on defense, or more unknowns at this point on the defensive side than on the offensive side. And, the biggest is replacing Cam in all three phases.
Right.
You got offensive playmaker and weapon, a defensive shutdown corner. I mean, teams barely threw his way.
Yeah. He
didn't have much defensive statistics because the ball was barely on his side of the field.
Just look at that Manheim Township game. And we can say it now because we're not going to face him again. But when he started traveling in the second half, they didn't even throw to the kid who tore us apart.
Yeah.
Early in the game.
Right.
Yeah. They stopped throwing to him because it was there. And it seemed like Harrisburg was, if Cam was out, they were running. And if he was in or on the other side, they were going away from him too. Not just with the passes, but with the runs. They were going away from Cam a lot.
And then obviously in the return game, you're not going to find a guy that can take five punts back to the house on just 6 attempts.
Right.
That's nearly impossible. I would say it is impossible, except we saw it this year.
Right.
And that's no disrespect to Eddie, who'll be back, because if they use him as a kick return or a punt returner, he's already proved that he can do it.
Right.
It's just, I think trying to get him to be Cam is asking a lot.
I'm trying to think. So we had Eddie, and then Mackay had a kickoff
return for a touchdown,
and Cam had some. So between the three of them, we had 3 guys return things for touchdowns.
Yes. Mackay, Eddie, and Cam all had return touchdowns.
three different guys that have special team returns for touchdown is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. It'll be interesting. I mean, Eddie or whoever else is back there. We saw Carell Akings field some kickoffs, I believe. I think he actually also was the punt returner when they put the JV in. I think he was only a freshman this year. So it'll be interesting because Wilson special teams are going to have more opportunities. Now they don't have the cam cloud hanging over the opponent's head and feel like you can't kick to him. Right. So they're going to get more opportunities, at least to start the year.
Right.
So we already know that they can handle it, though, that they can take it back to the house. So,
well, and if the guys buy in and block like they did, like we talked about it, and the coaches and Cam would always point out, like setting those walls, if they buy into it like that, hopefully we can keep get some more dynamic plays in that realm as well.
All right, so for the last time, we want to do our housekeeping here at the end of the show. Didn't do it earlier, so we're going to do it now before we sign off. I do want to thank our sponsors for Season 8 of the Bulldog Hour. Appreciate our show is presented by Mays Sandwich Up, and thank my dad, Bill Mays, for being here with us from the start, not just this season, but also in seasons past, dating all the way back to 2015 when this all got started. The rest of our Season 8 sponsors were as follows. Mike Drago and MikeDragoSports.com. Just had him on last week on the show. Appreciate him stopping by, as well as Jeff Reiner for joining us last week too. The Hop family, Andy Herr, who we didn't catch up with Andy this year. So disappointing. That'll make it even better next year then.
That's right.
And our 6 anonymous donors, thank you very much. Appreciate you sticking with us here, and all the kind words that everyone has said to us via email, social media, or in person. Justin and I really appreciate hearing that. And it'll never not be funny to us when people recognize us and be like, "You're the guys from the Bulldog Hour, or you guys from that show." Oh, I recognize your voices.
Right? Yeah, that was.
We always get a good laugh out of that. So we really do appreciate all of you that have supported us in whatever fashion it may be. And, we're not going anywhere. We're planning to be back here for Season 9 in 2023. And then I'll be just around the corner because we always do our first episode just a week or two after the Super Bowl in February. We'll do a winter update. We might talk about a little bit about other Wilson sports, how the winter sports are going, because at that point you're in counties or maybe even in districts for all those sports. And last year we had Jim Berkman on from Spotlight Berks, and he kind of went through how things went throughout the winter season. So that was a lot of fun. But we'll be back to talk Wilson football. So what is that, about 3.5 months? And we're Justin and I are always talking about it in some capacity.
Yeah, well, we joke that we just sat down and record the conversations we were already having.
Yeah,
we're not exaggerating. Like,
it might be a little bit more colorful or emotional. We try to keep it.
Well, and there are certainly things to talk about off the air that we don't talk about on the air.
Like I'll talk about the thing that the refs have with the refs,
or our quick errand we had to run before the game.
Yes.
Or your new addiction to Popeyes.
Yeah, Popeyes chicken. Yes, very good. Very good. Yeah. We get to run errands. Yeah, all good stuff. So if you're looking to help us out here at the Bulldog Hour, the sponsorships, advertising, kind donations are great. We do also appreciate you visiting BulldogHour.com for all things Wilson football. And then continually and always, Justin's favorite.
Yeah, like and share. It's also a good way to stay in touch. So these weekly shows, you kind of know when they're coming, but liking and sharing can help kind of keep those things in your feed for in a few months when we come back and start to, lay the groundwork for the 2023 season.
Yeah, believe it or not. Yeah. And Season 9 of the show. We're getting really close to double digits on seasons of this show. We've been podcasting. Justin and I have been podcasting for nearly 12 years now, but we're finishing year 8 of the Bulldog Hour.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Think about it. The kids who are freshmen our first year out of college.
No, yes, they are. You had to say that, huh? So, all right. Well, again, thank you everyone for a great year on this show and a great year at Gursky and around Berks, Lancaster, Lebanon, and Mid-Penn County.
Yeah.
We are excited to be back again in a few short months. And before you know it, the holidays will be over. It'll be springtime, and then it'll be it'll be August again. All of a sudden, we'll be right back here for season 9.
Right.
But we'll keep the content coming. We'll have at least 2 or 3 shows in the off season, usually every other month, to keep to feed that Wilson football appetite that we all know that is prevalent in the community.
Yeah. Also, just real quick, thank you to the coaching staff when we address this kind of at the beginning of the year when we do some of the interviews and things, but they kind of give us the access that obviously we could do it without that, but it wouldn't be the same, but the access they allow us and the interactions we get to have with them kind of allow us to do the show the way we like to do it, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah. And we will definitely be having them back on the show. We always do the preseason interviews, but it was fun. This past year, we had defensive back coach Jamie Sands on the show where we talked about the greatest running backs in Wilson history. Defensive coordinator Ernie Wolver joined me over the summer to do a little one-on-one session. I think that was in June or July.
I think it was in June.
I think it was supposed to be in June, and I think it got delayed to July. But yeah, they've been giving us great access and are never said no to anything. No. Or if it's a no, it's I can't do this now. Can we do it then? Right. It's never a no. I don't want to do that. So we do appreciate their support as well. So anything else from you, Justin?
No, that pretty much sums it up. It didn't end the way we want, but it's tough. Like when you're good and you're going to make playoffs like Wilson does, a lot of years it's going to end the way you don't want it to. But, it's all part of kind of what you sign up for. And, it's tough right now, but it'll get better. And, really proud of the way the guys kind of came together this year and really fought hard.
Yep. So. Excellent senior class. Great group of young men, and looking forward to following their careers through the rest of the high school. And then, we always love when they come back to visit. We love seeing
it's fun.
The guys when they come back, in college and after. I still talk to some of the guys that I coached in my first, 1, 2, 3 years at Wilson, first at Central and then now at West. It's great. It's the kids don't just get lost or disappeared. Like it's awesome when they come back and you can talk, especially when it's far enough removed and now you're just like, they're just one of, they're just a friend or a colleague, if you start coaching with them. Right. So it's a lot of fun. So congratulations to this group of Wilson football players, and we look forward to the years to come.
Yep.
All right. So that's it for season 8 of the Bulldog Hour. We will be back for season 9 in February 2023. For Justin Raffoff, I'm Joe Mays. Until next time, remember, go Bulldogs.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Bulldog Hour. Want more Wilson football? Follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud, or visit www.bulldoghour.com. The Bulldog Hour is a featured program on jmnjrradio.com.